Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night for Tuesday, October the 28th, 2025. I just got off one of the most amazing Zoom calls that I have ever been on. lots to digest. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it in the extension tonight on shadowdavis.com. And also, how do I explain this? You guys have heard of Satanists, right? It's like a recognized religion somehow. Well, there's a guy out there who left Satanism a few years ago, but was privy to all of their secrets and their plans. He's since become a Christian. And we're going to play a snip of something he said on a podcast in South Africa a little bit later on in the show. And then we've got an entire thing with him on the extension tonight. And I've got a message into him to get him on the show because I'm telling you, some of the things he said makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. John Carpay, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, joins the show tonight. We're going to talk human rights. We're going to talk about cash money possibly fading away and more in just a couple of minutes. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Silver is amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
CanadaNanoSilver.com. Check it out. Get your gummies, get your facial serum, get your lozenges. It's all there, and cold and flu season is upon us. So you want to get the best stuff, and you want to support the show and local at the same time, CanadaNanoSilver.com. Hello, John. How are you? Thanks for coming on tonight.
Hey, glad to be with you, Shadow, and all of your viewers and listeners.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And I want to talk about human rights, obviously, because I know that you guys are pursuing a couple of cases that involve that right now. And it seems to me the bastardization of the codes in many different provinces and how they're using them against people as opposed to how they were originally intended to be used. At least that's my surmise. But I want to talk about, because the top of your webpage here, jccf.ca, the attack on cash through Bill C2. It's a video that you did. It's up on YouTube now. I think it's into the hundreds of thousands of views. It's my understanding that Bill C2 right now has been split into two parts. C2 still alive. They haven't gotten rid of it yet, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to pass that unless you know something I don't.
Well, our fate is in the hands of the bloc. The NDP has expressed opposition to Bill C2, which, as you mentioned, it does make it illegal to use cash in amounts greater than 10,000. And a lot of people quite reasonably say, well, what's the big deal? You know, how often are you using $10,000 cash to donate to a charity or to pay an invoice? But the reality is that in a free country, if you and I have a business deal, and if we want to use cash, that's our right as citizens. And unless we're doing something illegal, the government has no business telling us that we have to do it by credit card or check or e-transfer. So that limit, by the way, once that's accepted, next thing you know, it's going to be 5,000 maximum cash you can use, and then 1,000, and then maybe you can still use $100 for garage sale. And when that gets scrapped, we'll have central bank digital currency, and government will control all the money because money will be consisting of numbers on a computer only.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people that are saying this is, and I'm one of them, that are saying this is just a precursor to the digital IDs. They're imposing mandatory imposition in the UK.
as well as locking up people who make intemperate comments about immigration. I'm sure in the United Kingdom, if you were an academic, a professor, and you wrote a scholarly paper about immigration, you would probably be fine. But if you're somebody that is upset about some immigrants, they have a lot of problem with rape gangs that are grooming girls, and in some cases they're not prosecuted because the police are terrified of being called racist. If you speak in intemperate language, you can get arrested, jailed, or you just get a knock on the door from police warning you that you better cool it with your social media expression.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of videos of people being visited in the middle of the night for something they said on Facebook or X or Instagram, and they actually get hauled away to jail in the UK. Do you see this happening in Canada if they continue down this path?
Yeah, if we pass bills C2, C8, C9, and if we, on top of that, if we reintroduce the Online Harms Act, which thankfully died just before died on the order paper when we went to our election in April of 2025. So it died. But if the Online Harms Act, which is the most savage and aggressive attack on free expression in Canadian history, if that's brought back and passed into law, the last time around, the Bloc was supporting it along with the Liberals, so that's pretty scary. Mm-hmm. And then bills C2, C8, C9, and add on the Online Streaming Act that was passed 2 years ago. Those 5 things together will turn us into the United Kingdom, and you're going to see a lot of Canadians arrested over what they say.
Did you, because I found this to be alarming when they passed the Online Streaming Act, and all of a sudden you couldn't share any news or any links to news coverage on Facebook or Instagram anymore. I thought, oh my God, people they're gonna rebel, but they didn't. They just sat there and went, oh well, what are you gonna do? Did that surprise you?
Well, when I saw how so many Canadians cheerfully, sometimes enthusiastically, gave up their basic human rights and their constitutional freedoms when lockdowns were imposed, when governments pressured us to get injected with a substance for which there was no long-term safety data, contrary to the principles of the Nuremberg Code, which emerged in the aftermath of the Second World War, when the Nazis had inflicted medical experiments on unwilling participants. The Nuremberg Code says there must be fully informed consent and fully voluntary consent to a medical treatment. And so I have these massive violations of the Nuremberg Code right here in Canada, and people are applauding it. And so now on the bright side, you mentioned that Bill C2 has been split into different parts, and that is a direct result of so many Canadians contacting their member parliament saying Bill C2 violates freedom, it violates privacy, it's a big step towards turning Canada into a police state. And the MPs got so much pushback that the government took out more palatable part of it about our immigration, refugees, our borders, put that into a separate bill, Bill C12, which may very well get the support of the Conservatives. They can get that through to please President Trump. So we've got our, different immigration and refugee policies. And then the rest of Bill C2, they have said they still want to pass it, but it's pretty clear they've put it on the back burner because they know that if they try to have Bill C2 passed in its current form, it might not get through.
John, of all the rights we have through the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, in your opinion, what is the most important of them? And I know it's a tough question. I don't like to, it's like saying, what's your favorite breakfast cereal? Because there's many of them, and it's difficult to, discern which one may be the most important. In my opinion, it's the freedom of speech. If they shut us up, then everything else goes away. But that's only my take. What's yours?
If the government took away every single right and freedom that you have, but left you with your freedom of expression intact, you could use your freedom of expression to collaborate with others to get your message out, to organize, and you could use your freedom of expression to win back all the other rights and freedoms that you've lost. If you get rid of your freedom of expression, then you're no longer even in a position to defend yourself against the gradual removal of other rights and freedoms. So it's on a philosophical level, it might not be the most important, but on a practical level of how do we preserve the free society, the freedom of expression is probably the most important freedom.
In the past, I know there have been some hate speech cases in this country. The one that comes to my mind first would be Ernst Zundel back in, I think it was the 80s and the 90s. Are there any others that stand out to you in terms of the government saying you can't say that and we're going to put you in jail for doing so?
Well, the Supreme Court, the Zundel decision was very good. And the Supreme Court, one of the passages that I just love, Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin said that majority opinion has no need for constitutional protection because it is tolerated in any event. But the reason we have freedom of expression is to protect the peaceful expression of opinions that the majority views as false or wrong or damaging, destructive, toxic. And so the whole point of constitutional freedoms is the same with religion. You know, if you're part of this, you know, non-church going kind of believing God, but, you know, whatever, right? If that's kind of your religious perspective, you don't need constitutional protection for that. You need constitutional protection if you belong to an unpopular religion, so that you have the right to stand on a street corner and hold up a sign, or, you know, proclaim your faith to people who might not be interested, etc. So what the Supreme Court has done since Zundel is they have slowly moved away from that. They haven't formally repudiated it. And, you know, a lawyer can still go into court and rely on Zundel as authority for the proposition that freedom of expression in the Charter is there to protect views that the majority considers to be wrong or false. It's still on the books, but a more recent decision was in Whatcott, where a social conservative activist was handing out flyers denouncing gay sex and saying it, you know, could send you to hell, it's bad for your health. And the flyers were obviously very offensive, and the Supreme Court ruled against him at the end of the day, and went so far as to conflate criticism of sexual behavior with an attack on people who are practicing that behavior, which is bizarre. So now that was a human rights tribunal case. He was not charged with criminal hate speech. He has been, though, the same guy, the Toronto Gay Pride Parade, he and some buddies dressed up as green gay zombies, if you can believe it. And they handed out flyers that were tucked into a package that looked like it might have a condom inside, but when you took it out, it was a piece of paper. And it had photographs of really awful diseases that Bill Whatcott says you can get from engaging in gay sex. And he's been criminally charged, and it's been hanging over his head for years. He was acquitted, and then the Crown appealed, and now a retrial has been ordered. This is about handing out, you know, pamphlets that were no doubt were very offensive to some of the recipients, or maybe to a lot of the recipients were very offended by it. But it's a pamphlet. He didn't say that anybody should be put to death, you know, but this is characterized as hate speech for a guy who is undiplomatic and very aggressively denounces gay sex as being bad for your body and bad for your soul, is being charged with hate speech. That's where we're at in Canada today.
Yeah, it just seems to me that, you know, the term hate, and I think we've talked about this before, is very subjective. One man's hate is another man's I don't care. And, you know, one of the things you said there was if somebody says something that goes against the dogma, right, the popular vision of what this thing is supposed to be, if you say something that is completely contrary to that, then you can be charged with hate speech. Is that what the judge said?
It's not quite as simple, but what's disconcerting about the hate speech provisions is that hate is an emotion and it is experienced subjectively by people. So I don't really know if somebody else is hateful or not, right? So you get some pro-Palestinian protesters chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Is it possible that that person hates Jews? Yes, it is. Do you really know if they hate Jews? We don't know that. In terms of any slogan, it's the subjective feeling of a subjective perception of the listener who decides whether something is hateful or not. And so in this new,
but that's their problem though, isn't it? It's like, it's that person's problem, how they take something that somebody says or writes down. It's not something that an outsider like a judge can decide upon.
Well, the Supreme Court of Canada about 30 years ago came this close to striking down the criminal hate speech provisions as an unjustified violation of freedom of expression. It was a narrow majority. It was a 4-3 ruling, and the Supreme Court, the majority said, yes, the criminal code prohibition on the willful promotion of hatred is a violation of free expression, but we think it's justified for purposes of social harmony, that you cannot be willfully promoting hatred against a group based on their sex, race, religion, age.
Social harmony is not within their purview when it comes to a decision like that. I mean, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it gives us the right to expression, freedom of expression, right? And, this new trend of the left, more than anybody else, saying, oh my God, that's an attack, as you pointed out earlier. Right? It's not an attack. It's something that I said. My grandfather told me when I was 5 years old and I came home crying from school because some bully was calling me fat. He said, sticks and stones may break my bones, son, but names will never hurt me. Where did that go?
It's, a free society requires a thick skin, and it requires some maturity amongst people. And certainly what I've seen on campus, as a lawyer, I've taken on many free speech cases on campus, and it's this just notion that you're entitled to go through life, even on a university campus, and not hear things that you find disturbing. And so we've lost a lot of that maturity. I'm 58 years old. I grew up in the 1980s, and I have no recollection of cancel culture being there. If somebody said something really horrible, there'd be a negative reaction from community members, and they'd say, oh, what you're saying, it's terrible, it's totally wrong. You never, in my experience, you didn't hear calls for that person should be silenced, they should be jailed, they should be criminally prosecuted. That was just not part of it. And we've really slid backwards away from the idea of a free society where we recognize that debate and free inquiry is the road to truth. And in a free society, we as adults get to determine ourselves what is true or false, what is hateful, what is not hateful. In a tyranny, in a repressive regime, which is what we've been heading towards, it's the government decides on your behalf what is true or false, what is hateful, what is not hateful. And the government then goes out to punish people for spreading what the government considers to be hate or disinformation, misinformation. That's very scary. Whenever I hear about politicians, say, well, we got to ban disinformation on the internet. Well, yes, except
who determines what that is?
Who determines what is disinformation, right? Yeah. There's a lot of evidence coming out now suggesting that this vaccine is not, the vaccine that was imposed on Canadians 4 years ago is neither safe nor effective. There's lots of evidence, and even there, that should be subject to debate. The government should not be making a declaration as to what the truth is something we should all debate amongst ourselves.
Exactly. The Truth Commission, I think, or the Commission of Truth in the book 1984. You mentioned campuses. From the webpage here, jccf.ca, Mount Allison University issued legal warning after barring Christian from delivering food on campus. How does that even happen? Did a guy go out there and say Jesus is the way, and next thing you know, he can't come back and deliver any more food? Like, what's the story?
That's it in a nutshell, pretty much. This fellow, his name is Somesh Vyas, and he grew up in India, and he throughout his life was very intrigued by the West and our freedom of expression, and had always been interested in philosophy and debate. Came to Canada about 10 years ago. At some point had a conversion experience, became a Christian, believes that he's commanded by God to peacefully spread the Christian faith, was engaging students in conversation on campus. You might stand on a sidewalk with a sign and try to engage passersby in conversation. One of his jobs, and he's worked as a cook and also trading in the financial markets. He has done the DoorDash or food delivery as a way of earning money. And so he got a letter from the university saying that unless you agree to shut up and not engage students in conversation, you can't deliver food on campus. So they're going after his livelihood, in addition to a completely illegal trespass notice that he's not allowed to express his views on campus. This is somebody, look, if somebody's setting cars on fire or smashing shop windows or, doing a loud demonstration at 2 a.m., there's all kinds of laws that can take care of real problems. Right. But this is, and I've been seeing this for 20 years, taxpayer funded university that is censoring speech on campus.
Yeah. Was he being aggressive with any students, or was he just engaging in conversation as they passed by him? Not that
just engaging.
Right.
Well, if you're
no worse than somebody trying to sell you something in a mall, really, from one of those kiosks in the middle of an aisle.
And if that person that's trying to sell you something or preach their religion, if they're following you and repeatedly trying to engage you in conversation that you don't want to have, there are legal remedies for that. Yeah. You can call the police and say that there's harassment. And so there's laws on the books to take care of that. Like obnoxious behavior is, when it goes too far, obnoxious behavior is illegal, and there are legal remedies to address it. So the university has not filed any complaints with the police about any kind of misconduct. So it's the message that it's not a popular message on campus, and that should be irrelevant, right? Whether it's a popular, we gotta, mankind controls the weather and we got to save ourselves from the climate holocaust, which would be probably agreed with by many people, or whether it's an unpopular message like an evangelical Christian. It shouldn't matter whether it's popular or unpopular.
Is there a war on Christianity, in your opinion?
It certainly looks that way. This Bill C9, one of the bad ones before Parliament right now, the Combating Hate Act, when Justice Minister Sean Fraser introduced that piece of legislation, he said it was in response to rising anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, transphobia, and homophobia. And he said nothing about the dozens of churches that have been burned to the ground by arsonists. Not a peep said.
No.
And that's very telling. Unfortunately, synagogues have been vandalized, perhaps mosques also. I don't know. I don't know if dozens of synagogues or dozens of mosques or Hindu temples, Sikh temples have been burned to the ground. And yet we've had Christian churches in Canada burned to the ground. And the minister says nothing about this when he's introducing a piece of legislation. He talks only about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and transphobia. It doesn't talk about anything else.
Jamil Javani, one of the Conservative MPs, I think he's from riding just east of Toronto. I can't remember the name of the riding, but he was talking about a war on Christianity in the House of Commons a couple of weeks ago. I played a clip a couple of nights ago of it. And he was suggesting that he brought that up, the churches being burned to the ground, the dozens of them. And the response he got from the Liberal side was laughter, detraction, jeering, booing, cackling, clapping even. And when you get that kind of a response by saying Christian churches are being burned to the ground, there's something going on.
People need to be vigilant. I mean, with the Justice Centre, we defend all Canadians, and I tend to not look at religion or politics, but I have to agree with your point. I mean, it's very telling when the Justice Minister doesn't mention churches being burned to the ground and mentions only anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. That's not good.
No, I agree. Speaking of faith-based objection, and you mentioned the vaccines a few minutes ago. Ontario Human Rights Tribunal urged to reconsider ruling that dismissed students' faith-based objection to COVID vaccine mandate. What was their rationale behind that?
Well, a big part of it is not looking at the evidence that was presented, and I've outlined many examples in my book, Corrupted by Fear, where the judiciary does not seriously look at the evidence that was presented before the court and base its decision on that evidence, but rather they write the media narrative into their court judgments. Or in other cases, the judge will set out what the government's evidence was and what the evidence was of the Canadian citizens going to court over the violation of their charter freedoms. He explains the evidence on both sides and says the government's evidence was better, stronger, more persuasive, so I'm going to rule in favor of the government, but never explains why or how or on what basis the government's evidence is deemed better by the judge. We had one judge in Ontario went so far, Renee Pomerantz, she's on the Ontario Court of Appeal now. She said, proudly, there are many disputes in this case before me. Is COVID really extremely deadly, or is it more like a bad annual flu? Are lockdowns actually effective, or not so much? Are lockdowns doing more good than harm? But, she says, I am neither equipped nor inclined to resolve scientific controversies regarding COVID-19. And then she goes on to rule in favor of the Ontario government. After having said she's neither equipped nor inclined to determine scientific controversies, she rules in favor of the government. So that is the state of the judiciary, and that same mentality has crept into the human rights tribunals as well.
I think you mentioned a few weeks ago on this show that you've seen that particular judge rule in decisions like that dozens of times in the past.
Well, actually, the irony is the same judge, okay, if a lawyer had said in 2019 that this judge is neither equipped nor inclined to resolve scientific controversies, that lawyer would probably have received a threatening letter from the Law Society for attacking the credibility for publicly attacking the credibility of a judge. And judges are called upon all the time in medical malpractice cases, in criminal cases, in a construction case where a building collapsed. They always have to resolve scientific controversies about what caused the building's collapse, or whether the doctor was negligent or not, or a piece of evidence in a criminal case, whether the evidence is reliable or not. Judges are continually resolving scientific controversies as part of their job, and yet this judge who has no problem making decisions about science in other cases, when it's a violation of our fundamental rights and freedoms, she says, oh, I'm neither equipped nor inclined to resolve scientific controversies about COVID-19.
Sounds like giving reverence to the government. And I know that judges do that as kind of a practice. So there's more of an onus on the complainant, right? I mean, when you go to court against the government, you really have to come packing.
Depends on the issue, though, because we had a ruling in Alberta a few months ago where the Premier Daniel Smith had announced, I think it was back in January, that the government would be protecting children and adolescents from transgender ideology, and that children under the age of 16 would not be getting puberty blockers and opposite sex hormones that could render them permanently infertile and forever unable to become mothers and fathers, and that parents had to be notified if the boy was going to start using a girl's name, wearing girls' clothing, girls' sports teams, etc. Parent would have to be notified of their own child taking steps on this journey towards a futile quest of trying to become the opposite sex. And so, very sensible policy, in line with what other governments are doing all around the world. They're backing away from this transgender rage and or trend, I mean to say. And so there was a gay rights group, AGAL, took the government's policies to court And they very quickly got an interim injunction where the judge agreed with her argument that somehow children have a charter right to keep their own parents in the dark, which is ridiculous. We don't allow children to vote. You can't get a tattoo under the age of 18 without parental consent. Parents need to sign permission just for a school field trip to the zoo. And yet somehow it's okay to keep parents in the dark about what's happening with their own child at school under the influence of God knows who, whatever transgender political activist is getting access to the kids. And so judges are sometimes they're too deferential to government, certainly during COVID and vaccine passports and that. But other times, depending on the case before them, judges are decidedly not deferential to governments.
You know what? Every time you're on, there's so many offshoot questions that I want to interrupt you and ask you about. And I don't want to interrupt you because you're on a roll yourself. But what goes into, John, what goes into a judge's decision? Are they allowed to ask other people what they think? Like, honey, this is a tough one. Can you help me out with this? Or are they like sequestered and they have to come up with the ruling on their own?
Well, the ruling is supposed to be based only on evidence that was placed before the court. And I think in the past and probably still today, if it's a murder trial, the judge will tell the jury, you shouldn't listen to media in the first place in regards to this, criminal trial. But if you do, you have to completely disregard it and you have to look only at the evidence that was placed before the court. And I would venture a guess that when it comes to murder trials, I think judges are probably doing their job, close to 100%. But when our charter freedoms were violated by lockdowns, and the government's admitted in court that the charter freedoms were violated, they never denied that. You have this judge in Manitoba in the Gateway case. He wrote into his court ruling that COVID is the worst pandemic in a century, and that it's unprecedented. And both assertions are false. They're not supported by evidence before the court. COVID was not unprecedented. We had the much, much worse Spanish flu of 1918. And even the Asian flu of 1957 and the Hong Kong flu of 1968 were more deadly than COVID. So for the judge to write into his court ruling, COVID was it's the deadliest pandemic in a century is simply false. But he's going off of the media, whereas the approach he should be taking is the same one that he would take in a murder trial, and you look only at the evidence before the court.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who think that our justice system is kind of teetering on the brink of corruption here. And I know you probably won't comment on
ideological corruption.
Yeah. Exactly. This is the last one I want to cover with you tonight, John. From the website again, 2 Grimsby residents fight $75,000 human rights claim filed by town councillor over a Facebook page. We've been seeing a lot more of this lately, where politicians are filing human rights claims, or they're just suing outright people who make a joke about them on social media. Is that what this is?
There's a sitting councillor in Grimsby, Ontario. Her name is Jennifer Corstania, and her political opponent in the election 3 years ago in 2022 is a fellow named Duncan Story. Duncan Story started up a Facebook page called the Grimsby Independent News. And there's some people made some critical, members of the public made critical comments about Jennifer Corstania. Somebody called her a witch. But and then there's another individual who's not even involved in the Facebook page. His name is David Sharp. And so she has filed a human rights complaint against these 2 individuals, coincidentally or not coincidentally, just as we're heading into 2026 when the next election will take place. And it's ridiculous on so many levels. First of all, the Ontario human rights legislation doesn't apply to speech. It applies to services. A Facebook page is not really a service that, it's not like a dry cleaning business or a restaurant that's, told some black guy or some woman that they don't want to serve her. And the idea that she's discriminated against because she's a woman also doesn't hold water, but that shouldn't even be an issue. It's the Human Rights Code doesn't, in Ontario, does not apply to speech. Unfortunately, in the 4 Western provinces, it does apply to speech. So we have worse legislation in BC, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan.
It applies to speech. So, and I guess Manitoba just put one in a few months ago that says if you're found to be intentionally misgendering somebody, you can be held liable for that, like fines of $20,000, jail time even. So if I walk into a Tim Hortons,
it's so totalitarian.
It is, dude. You're not a woman. I mean, I appreciate that you think you are, but don't expect me to call you her or she or whatever it is. I could be hit with a human rights complaint and a huge monetary penalty on top of that. That's crazy.
People have to contact their MLA, regardless of whether your MLA is NDP or Conservative or something else, and object to it, because most politicians are followers, not leaders. And I'd venture a guess most Manitobans don't like the idea of facing a $20,000 fine for misgendering somebody. But it's a symptom, not the cause. It's a symptom of the cultural decline. We have not been teaching our kids or grandkids we don't teach them history. If somebody doesn't understand history, you can persuade them of anything. They don't understand our heritage. They don't understand why the free society is superior to the Nazis, the communists, the theocrats, whatever, right? The exterior coding doesn't matter. Students don't know why. A lot of younger people and older people, they don't really believe that a free society is better than a repressive regime. They will start believing it once their own ox gets gored and it hits home. But ideally, you want to be in a place where people just understand the concept that a free society is better than tyranny, even if they might not be personally affected by the tyrannical laws.
John, thank you for joining the show again tonight. Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have you back again one day very, very soon. Thanks again.
Have a great rest of the night.
You too. There is John Carpay, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. We're coming right back.
I've been struggling with acne for a while, and my mom brought me SilverCeuticals, and I did not want to try it at first because I hate all that stuff on my face. But I'm super glad I did because it hydrates my skin, doesn't leave me dry. I don't use coconut oil on anymore. And I'm super glad my mom showed me it, and I'm glad she's showing other people because I think it does wonders. Some of the other things I love about SilverCeuticals is that it's natural, it's not a pharmaceutical, and it just makes your skin glow and feel super hydrated. You don't feel like dry at all, and it just keeps that way for the entire day, and that's awesome. I've had a few people comment on how my face has cleared up. It's mostly been family members, and once my mom told them what I was using, they finally started using it too, and they're seeing great results as well. If a kid told me that they were struggling with skin issues, I'd 100% recommend SilverCeuticals because it fixes everything and it's amazing.
(808) area code 204 Canada Nano Silver.
And today,
CanadaNanoSilver.com. So this is kind of horrifying, actually, as we've covered MAID in the past, medical assisted in dying here in Canada. According to a recent publication in the Journal of Death and Dying, Health Canada has unveiled a plan for savings that is as brutal as it is unprecedented. As detailed by Kelsi Sheren, who, by the way, was in a press conference on the Hill today. The analysis reveals that from 2027 to 2047, the government is projected to save a staggering $1.273 trillion, which is about the amount of our current debt. Not through innovation or improved healthcare, but through death. More than 14 million Canadians, according to the data, will be culled by medical assistance in dying. Here is Kelsi.
Senator Pamela Wallin is hosting a backdoor closed meeting with the pro-death cult Dying with Dignity. She's helping them lobby to convince more MPs that they should vote to kill more of the vulnerable, disabled Canadians starting in 2027. See, we're told this is compassion and we're told it's choice. But when somebody's drowning in trauma and desperation, that's not a choice. That's coercion wearing a polite face. I've spoken with veterans who have reached out for help and asked for therapy, for hope, for treatment, and what they got instead was an offer to end their life. I've spoken to more veterans now, and the whistleblowers just keep coming. This is not one or two. This is well documented, over 20 and growing by the day. I know this because I report on it daily, and people seem to trust me with their stories. Imagine how deep that hopelessness must go. When your own country looks at you and decides that death is the very best it can offer. This isn't hypothetical anymore. This isn't some dystopian book. This is the reality in Canada, and it's happening. And it's not just happening to veterans. People with disabilities like myself and others, with chronic pain, with depression, bad breakups, loss, poverty, they're all being told the same thing.
Kelsi, by the way, is a former combat soldier with the Canadian Armed Forces. So that ad, that Reagan anti-tariff ad that Doug Ford put out in the United States last week, and Trump said, oh, no, you don't. Oh, no. No more trade negotiations with you. And then Ford said, okay, I'll take the ad off, but not until Monday. And Trump said, well, that's playing dirty. Remember, I played you the video last night. He said, that's playing dirty. And so we're going to add 10% on top of all the tariffs we're currently charging you on. Did Mark Carney know about this ad? He's mum on it. Carney mum, according to the CBC, on whether he saw Ontario's anti-tariff ad beforehand. Prime Minister's office says there will be no further comment on the Ontario government ad that derailed U.S. trade talks. Mark Carney currently on a 9-day visit over in the Far East. Here's a little video of Carney talking about it, and then you'll see Doug Ford telling you what you probably already know.
Says he's canceled these trade talks because he's upset about the Ontario government ad. We've heard from the Business Council of Canada and even some of President Trump's own advisors who suggest the frustration with Canada runs deeper. So is this about the ads, or is this about something else?
I would suggest you take the president at his word for his reasons.
Was a free trader.
The Prime Minister was explicit today in saying that it was the ad that derailed negotiations which were moving ahead. With that in mind, why don't you feel you owe Ontarians an apology?
For sticking up for Ontarians, well, let's talk about a so-called imminent deal. I've been hearing this for month after month after month, and if there was no mention about auto.
How are relations with the Prime Minister? Are things strained now because of what's happened?
Not at all. He saw the ad before I put it out, so did his chief of staff. They both saw it, and we moved forward on it. But again, we achieved our goal. As we say, mission accomplished. It was done.
He and his chief of staff saw the ad before we put it out. They knew. Did they say, maybe you shouldn't do that? Maybe you should rethink this? Or were they saying, yeah, man, go ahead. That's great. Awesome. That'll really shake things up. Who knows? These people are either very smart or very dumb. I think very dumb in Doug Ford's case. I think pretty smart in Mark Carney's case, but he's demented, thinking that he and his buddies can control the world. Or then again, maybe they can't. If we can't wake enough people up and start to have them stand up and fight back, and I'm not talking about with pointed sticks, torches, and rotten fruit. I'm talking about with words and by saying, we will not comply. Digital ID is coming. It's a thing. And if people just buy right into that, that's the end game. That's what they need. They need our consent. If we give it to them, we're done for. We're China. Welcome to the social credit score. And that's something I've been saying for quite some time now. And I think maybe it's time for everybody who's watching this right now to speak up to their closest friends and family members and say, look, you guys, you know what? You can't sign on to this. You can't. I don't care what they threaten you with. Like Keir Starmer in the UK says, it will be mandatory if you want to work in the UK, you will have to get a digital ID. Now, you know they're going to stand up and say no. They already are. It's not going to be imposed until 2029, very close to 2030. Interesting. But you know that the Brits are going to fight back on that. What about us? We did it once. I think we can do it again. Okay, so this was in iPolitics this morning. MPs to vote on Conservative bid to order senior Prime Minister's office staff, Brookfield executives to appear before committee studying conflict of interest laws. They had that vote this afternoon, and here's Conservative MP Ned Couric with the announcement.
Hey folks, breaking news. A motion just passed in the House. The CEO of Brookfield Properties and Prime Minister Mark Carney's chief of staff will have to testify in front of the Ethics Committee.
No, he seems pretty happy about that. The Alberta teacher strike is pretty much over. Strike by 51,000 teachers in its fourth week. The province's UCP government claims it's already caused irreparable harm to students, and that's why Danielle Smith's government tabled back-to-work legislation last night, forcing teachers to return to the classroom this coming Wednesday. I assume that's tomorrow and not next Wednesday. The province and the Alberta Teachers Association have been deadlocked in a dispute over wages and classroom conditions. Too many students in my class. With the province's latest offer, including a 12% wage hike over 4 years and a promise to hire 3,000 more teachers, which is what the teachers union wants, but they're still not taking it. And, my friends, they have been negotiating this for what, 2 years now? Under the bill that will go through readings last night, the ATA and its members would face hefty fines if they don't comply, up to $500 a day for individuals and a $500,000 a day for the union. It would also impose a collective bargaining agreement previously put forward by the union in the province, which rank and file teachers overwhelmingly rejected in a vote. Now, apparently, the ATA, the Alberta Teachers Association, is going to fight back on this one, and that means that the Danielle Smith government may, in fact, have to invoke the notwithstanding clause, which could take this a couple of extra days to happen. In the meantime, they have been holding demonstrations all throughout the province, and this was captured by Juno News late last week. I'm not sure if this person is a teacher or a parent or both, but watch.
They're fighting for public education for my children. They deserve so much better than what they're getting right now. They need smaller classes. My kids are neurodivergent, so they deserve extra attention through their schooling, and they're not getting what they need. So we're here fighting for that.
Want to hold up your sign and explain what it means?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the church. I'm no longer within the church, and I found out that Smith is still in the church. So I contacted my scary little friend, and he said that he was willing to give her my seat instead. So hopefully she'll accept. And they're not getting.
Okay, wait a minute. So she says her kids are neurodivergent. Let me throw that up on the screen real fast here if I can. Let me take this down first. And now I'll throw this up on the screen. Neurodivergent. I want to get back to that demon in just a second. Neurodivergent, a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. This means the person has different strengths and struggles from people whose brains develop or work more typically. Well, some people who are neurodivergent have medical conditions. It also happens to people where a medical condition or diagnosis hasn't been identified, and you can bet that's probably the case in this case. Woman clearly in need of some help.
So we're here fighting for that.
Want to hold up your sign and explain what it means?
Yeah.
Like how is it that she has children, first of all, that haven't been taken away by Child and Family Services? This is outrageous. If she's serious, that is.
Sure. So I grew up in the church. I'm no longer within the church, and I found out that Smith is still in the church. So I contacted my scary little friend, and he said that he was willing to give her my seat.
So she's talking about contacting her scary little friend. I would imagine that that's the devil. Hey, Smith, the devil rang. He said you earned my seat.
My scary little friend, and he said that he was willing to give her my seat instead. So hopefully she'll accept that, and then she can go where she belongs.
She can go where she belongs, and I assume that she's talking about hell. Now, if she's truly a Satanist, wouldn't that be something that she would want really bad? I don't understand Satanists. I don't quite get what they're after. Anarchy, probably nihilism, destruction, and all of that. Tonight in the extension on shadowdavis.com, I've got a message into this guy, Rian Swigalar. He's a former Satanist. He's seen the light now, and he's a Christian. But he's from South Africa. He was privy to a lot of information because apparently these Satanists, they do plans in 9-year blocks. So he knows what's coming up until 2027. And all this talk about one world religion that we've been having for quite some time. Listen to what he has to say here.
Of a satanic organization. I saw the satanic agenda with my own eyes. I was in meetings discussing the satanic agenda with other satanic organizations around the world. So every 9 years it gets updated. So I'm just aware of the one that's being pushed now up to 2027. I don't know what the agenda is after that. But what I've seen with my own eyes and the online conferences that I've been in with other satanic leaders, this is what's going on at the moment. When I said when I left Satanism in May 2022, when I left Satanism, I said, and I have a recording of it, I said that in 2025, people will be arrested on the street for praying for other people. People will be prosecuted for being Christians in Europe. I said it because I saw it on the agenda. It wasn't a prophecy or that I saw the future. It was because I knew what was on the agenda. And people thought I was insane. So I'm saying today that in 2027, there's going to be a one world religion that will be the acceptable and the only religion around the world that will be legal, and it's not going to be Christianity.
Saying that the UN is behind this and the Satanic Church is behind this, and they are bringing 20 leaders from every religion together to convene and to say we're coming together, but Christianity will not be a part of it because those 20 leaders that are together will not agree on.
Christians will be part of the summit. Every religion in the world.
We're not going to be a part of the one world religion.
No, because they will not be able to agree on what is really the gospel and which version of the Bible is the right one. All this, the things they are fighting about at the moment is what's going to happen there. And then they're going to say, well, you are the most divided religion in the world. We cannot accept this as so whichever religion, and I have an idea, because it's also not Satanism, but I have an idea which one it will be, that will say, this is the religion, and this is what every leader in our religion agrees on is our dogma and our religion and our teachings. And yeah.
Do you mind sharing which one you think it is?
It's Islam.
Guy's name is Rian Swigalar. And like I said, I've got a message into him. Something more in-depth with him coming up on the extension tonight. And if he was right about people being arrested for praying on the streets, which is happening in Europe now, is he right about, I mean, that seems fairly soon, 2 years from now, for a one world religion, suddenly, doesn't it? But then again, we talked earlier tonight about the war on Christianity, didn't we? And that's been going on for quite some time. Coming up next month, it's the annual AGM of the UCP in Alberta, and some UCP members, according to the National Post, want to debate policies around Bitcoin, mRNA vaccines, separation, and more. The policies they want debated include a ban on pronouns in email signatures and unification of Alberta, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. It's going to be interesting. And also, from what I understand from certain insiders, they're going to be holding Danielle Smith's feet to the fire to start talking more about an independent Alberta without a united Canada. That's what she's been talking about for the past year and a half. She's been threatening a unity crisis in Canada, but she hasn't really gone as far as independence, completely and totally from Canada. An independent Alberta within a united Canada, whatever that means. Whatever that means. This is a bombshell out of the United States. Apparently, those pardons that Joe Biden auto-penned during the last day of his presidency could be wiped out. They could be voided. This is from the Washington Times. Void pardons. House says Biden used autopen without proper authorization. A months-long House investigation has concluded that President Biden was losing command of himself while in office and was not personally involved in many of the pardons, commutations, and other executive actions signed by an autopen. Here's what you need to know. Republican-led investigation questions validity of Biden's executive actions. And then we've got the White House doctor and a few others who are now taking the Fifth Amendment. That means they don't have to testify in front of committee on the House. And these were people who were right up close to Joe Biden in the last few months of his presidency. So what they're suggesting is that Biden was, in fact, of sound mind. He knew about these pardons and he authorized the autopen to sign them. But that's not what they were saying about a year and a half ago. Remember the debate that they held very early on in July, I think, of last year before the presidential election, well before the presidential election, Biden and Trump having that debate. And then all the video that started coming out around that time of Biden just aimlessly wandering around. Well, watch this. They had to admit that Biden was compromised mentally. That's why they kicked him out and brought Kamala Harris in. And now they're saying, no, he was competent. You can't have it both ways. Watch this.
Elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in.
What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Giorgia Maloney had to go over and get him. He was just kind of. That man was not competent. He did not know that those pardons were going, all those, maybe the Hunter Biden, maybe a couple of them in a fleeting moment of clarity. But I doubt that he had knowledge of all, and he signed the most pardons of any president in history. So it's quite possible that every single one of those pardons could be voided, which means they can go after Fauci. Yeah. So there's going to be a big election in New York for mayor, and there's this Marxist who's running for office, Mamdani, I think his name is. And Democrats almost always win in New York City, except for the exception of Rudolph Giuliani about 25, 30 years ago. He was America's mayor, remember? 9/11 and all of that. So now apparently it's a race between this Mamdani guy who's Palestinian Marxist. Seriously, he's leading by like 30 points. He's leading the next closest, which happens to be a Democrat named Andrew Cuomo. Remember him? Yeah. Cuomo was the governor of New York. Now he's running to be the mayor of New York City. And Cuomo released, I want you to watch this video. This is made by AI, by the way. It's about 2 minutes long. It's a slam on Mamdani. But I want you to watch this video, and Ask yourself what it reminds you of.
Mamdani's opponents want you to believe he's an inexperienced radical whose policies will make New York City more dangerous. But what do his actual supporters think?
Mamdani isn't crazy.
He's just trying to even the playing field.
You know, give everyone a fair shot. Sure, he said multiple times we need to defund the police, but that was just a metaphor.
And yes, he did say crime is a social construct. But that was also a metaphor.
His main backer, the Democratic Socialists' ideas are common sense, such as
Decriminalizing misdemeanors, like shoplifting.
third-degree assault, trespassing, prostitution,
and drunk driving.
With plans to decriminalize all drugs, Mamdani will be a job creator for drug dealers.
Instead of helping us homeless get off the streets and into the mental health facilities we need, he wants to give us safe injection sites to do crack and let us sleep in subway carts.
These are actual policies Mamdani and the DSA want to implement on day one.
When a woman's being domestically abused, she finally won't have to deal with some pesky cop to arrest the abuser, but now a social worker to help, kumbaya the situation.
Breathe in, breathe out.
Mamdani is finally lowering jail sentences. Guilty!
But Mamdani says you're free to go.
Woo-hoo!
Who cares if legalizing prostitution statistically leads to an increase for sex trafficking of women and young girls by 70%?
You can't have safety without equality.
For unlawful abiding citizens like us, globalize the intifada.
I'm a criminal. I'm a criminal. I'm a criminal.
I'm a criminal.
Yep. I'm a criminal. For Zoran. For Zoran Mamdani.
I didn't have a real job until I was 30, but sure, give me the keys to the city. What's the worst that can happen?
Paid for by Cuomo for NYC.
Does that remind you of anything? Does anything in that commercial look familiar to you? Anything at all? Marxists all follow a very rigid ideology. That's it for the show tonight, you guys. It's kind of tough for me to even say this, but more inside the world of Satanism coming up in the extension for the All Access Nighthawks at shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. For the rest of you, I'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. And don't forget, this show's last week on social media is this week. So if you want to keep watching the show next week, you got to become an All Access member at shadowdavis.com. You can do monthly or you can do yearly, and I will thank you in advance for your support. Have a great night, and I will catch you tomorrow, 8 o'clock Central.